In this video, I'm going to demonstrate a very simple setup that you can do to give you a visual indicator as to where your convergence point is inside of the Liberty 3D Stereo Immersive Camera. Now, by default, we have a convergence setting of 30. Now, what is 30? Well, it's actually 30 meters, and this is the interpupillary distance represented as eye distance of 0.007 meters, so that's 70 millimeters. Now, in our regular stereo camera, we had a blue plane that sat in front of the camera at a certain distance that would represent where convergence is. Now, the problem with that is that when we designed the immersive stereo camera, it didn't really seem like a practical representation to have this blue sphere around you at all times. And there was also a problem with it updating in OpenGL and Lightwave. So we decided to leave that function out, but you still need that kind of visual representation. So real easy way to do this, and many people have seen me do this before, and it's just to create a 1 meter radius ball. Now, why 1 meter? Well, we need it to be 1 meter because we want it to represent a one-to-one representation for how far away from the camera is the convergence point. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get this ball parented to our immersive camera. So we've just snapped it because I had parent in place off, and it's zapped itself directly to the camera here. All right. Now I'm going to just delete the keyframe so it's in the right spot. And we can see that it's just sitting there right on top of the camera. I should also note that this ball is going to need a surface on it if you want to see what's going on for the inside from the camera perspective. That's certainly helpful, and I'll show you why in a second. Now, once we've got that set up, what we want to do is we want to set the convergence to 0, and then we'll use a motion modifier called channel follower, and we're going to set it to the CP ball scale. You can set it to X, Y, Z, it doesn't really matter because we're going to use them all at the same time to just scale. And we can close this, and you'll immediately see that the convergence is now 1 meter away from the camera. Now, I don't have control over it. You can see that the control will pop up and say, hey, disabled. But now it's linked and envelopable just through the use of the scale of the object. Now, I'm going to turn the XYZ and the HPB off because I don't need control over that. But if I'm going to point my camera at the ship, okay, how do I determine where the convergence point is? Well, very simply, just grab that CP ball, hit Shift H to scale it, and scale it up. And wherever the ball intersects the ship is your convergence point. So looking at this from the inside, what's going to happen for you? Okay, well, I'm currently looking at this with solid shaded, and I have it set to be wireframe. Let's set it to solid shaded for the ball, and you can see a very simple representation of whatever's inside the ball is, forward of the convergence point. Whatever's outside of the ball that you can't see is behind the convergence point. So by scaling this ball up and down, we've got a representation of where the convergence point physically is in 3D space, and we can make a very quick animatable control out of this relationship, and it's something that you can bake out or throw into a network. It should work just fine, although some people have had problems with channel follower over the network. I haven't really had that experience in quite some time, so it works. But you can just use that scale option on that ball to give you a really nice representation of where the convergence point is. And it's something that you're going to probably want to hide from render. Obviously, you don't want to see the rest of that ball in there. And unless you have the double-sided option on the surface, you're not going to be able to see it from inside the camera where that actually physically is represented. It might be helpful just to turn smoothing on, and you might want to just turn the diffuse off and set the luminosity to 100% so it doesn't have a shaded option. So when you're looking at it like this, it kind of more closely represents depth, and indeed you may want to use these types of controls to control depth for doing focus effects inside of an immersive render like this, but that could get a little bit tricky. The point of this, though, is that you now have a visual representation of where your convergence point is using an immersive camera in stereo from UberCam 2.1. It's very easy to work with. Wherever you move your camera, it's going to follow you around. You know where your convergence point is. Everything's where it's supposed to be. And when you go to render it, because you've set it up correctly, you shouldn't have any problems. I'm just going to do a quick F9 here because VPR doesn't seem to want to work for me right at the moment. And we can see that from this perspective of the immersive camera, we've got our stereo render. Left is top and right is bottom for the framing, just in case you didn't know that already. And if you took a ruler, you would notice that these would be slightly offset, but the distortions would also be done in such a way that you get the stereo effect. Because our camera isn't just simply a left and right eye camera that you would expect in a simple stereo setup. We're actually doing some very sophisticated mathematics to ensure that the perspectives from those two eyes are being dealt with properly in a spherical environment. So that's just a little bit of trivia there for you. But there it is. You've got a really easy control that you can set up, and you can also do this for eye distance as well. The closer that something is for convergence, you're probably going to want to clamp down on that eye distance a little bit so that you don't get that doubling that will give your brain a little bit of confusion. And you can set up these types of relationships and just use very simple controls like a ball or a plane or a null and scale it or move it from camera and get the effect that you're looking for control. And this is a very simple, easy way to make that work for you. All right, so we're going to have a few more of these videos, tips and tricks with UberCam 2.1, so stay on the lookout for them. Cheers.